Did you hear about the tornado that went through the dairy farm last week?
Yeah, man, I heard it was an utter disaster.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to talk about primal cuts.
So we're going to break this down into two parts. The kosher, potentially kosher certified half of the cow, and then the non-kosher certifiable half of the cow. And every single cut, we're going to go in a little bit into detail and tell you what those cuts really mean to the consumer.
Alright guys, so time to break it down. You got the kosher and non-kosher. Kosher is front half. We're going to keep referring back to this diagram so you guys have something to go off of. The kosher part is basically chuck, rib, plate, brisket, and shank. Alright, first up, we're going to talk about chuck. Primarily when you see this at the grocery store, it's going to be your ground beef. People don't do a whole lot with it. You might see a top blade steak or a chuck fillet, something like that, but it's not very common. It's not really a great piece of meat, very tough. So yeah, like I said, mostly you're going to see it in ground beef. Okay, next, ribs. Personally, my favorite, full of fat, marbly content. You're gonna get your rib eyes, your ribeye roast, your prime rib, your back ribs. This is like a very sought after portion of the cow. Very flavorful, very tender, just all around good. Next, brisket. That in its own is a primal cut. The only reason it can be cut into a subprimal is the brisket point and the brisket plate. That's just separating the smaller part from the bigger part. Again, overall, full of flavor. The way that you're gonna cook that is low and slow. There's no really other way you can do it. Next up, the plate. If you go to a Mexican restaurant and you get fajitas, this is where it's coming from. Skirt steak, hanger steak, something like that. It's a very small portion of the cow, but that being said, it is very flavorful. It's one of those where high heat, super quick cook temp, and serve. You don't want to overdo it. Okay, last cut to round out the kosher cut, shank. Not a whole lot you can do with this. You'll see stew meat or ground beef. That's about it. So yeah, hope you learned a little bit about that half.
All right, so now we're on to the hindquarters of the cow. These are the non-kosher cuts, and they go the round, the sirloin, the loin, and the flank. All right, so what separates the kosher versus the non-kosher parts of the cow goes way back to a story in the Bible. I'm not going to get into it. You're more than welcome to look it up if you want. But basically, the hindquarters of the cow cannot be kosher certified. All right, so the first non-kosher cut we're going to talk about is the loin. All right, so in this cut, you're going to have all of your high-end steaks, T-bones, fillets, strip steaks, the tri-tips, and the sirloins. This is a very medium fat content part of the cow. You're going to have a good amount of marbling, but you're also going to have a lot of that tenderness and flavor. So I didn't mention this. The sirloin and the loin are actually just the loin primal cut. So the sirloin, and this is actually the short loin, are subprimals. But a lot of the times they get grouped together as one. It just really just depends on who you ask, but they are essentially the same thing. All right, so next up is the round cut. So a lot of this is going to turn into your roast, your top round, bottom round, eye of round, your sirloin tip. And a lot of people like to use this cut for beef jerky as well because it's very lean. There's not a lot of marbling in it. So what you're going to want to do with this is take your roast, cook them low and slow, just like a brisket. Throw a little bit of liquid in there so they get nice and juicy and tender. Last and absolutely not least, we have the flank. So the flank, you're going to get your flank steak, London broil, and sometimes you'll get some ground beef off of it as well. Flank steaks are awesome. They're thicker than a skirt steak, but you're going to do the same thing. You know, season them however you want, high heat, let them rest, and you're done. You just cut them real nice and thin. They're very lean and tender, and they're just really an overall great piece of meat.
All right, guys, there it is. We went over all the primal cuts of a cow. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Hope you learned a little bit.
We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.